My name is Claire. I'm 38. And I don't know exactly when I stopped recognizing my own life, but I know it was before the knock. The robe part? That's just the surface, the part you could laugh about, maybe turn into a funny story over wine with your girlfriends. But this isn't funny. It's heavier than that. It's about something I hadn't wanted to say out loud until now. I think I've disappeared inside my own marriage. It wasn't always this way. When I met Daniel, I felt chosen. Really chosen, you know? He was calm where I was chaos, steady where I spun out. Our connection wasn't just chemistry, it was safety and spark, all tangled up. Our first few years were beautiful in that honeymoon glow sort of way. Lazy Saturday mornings in bed. His hand instinctively finding mine in a crowd. Dinners that turned into dancing barefoot in the kitchen. We kissed in elevators. We made out in parking lots. We whispered dreams under the covers and swore we'd never stop trying. But now? It's not even that we argue. It's that we don't. Silence is louder than yelling, sometimes. Last Tuesday, I made his favorite breakfast. Scrambled eggs with chives, the way he likes them, and fresh sourdough toast. I set it all out on the table and stood there waiting for his smile. I got a distracted thanks and the sound of a news podcast in his ears as he walked out the door with his laptop under his arm. He didn't even taste the toast. Later that night, I leaned into him on the couch. We were watching something forgettable. I reached out, rested my head on his chest like I used to, but instead of his arms circling around me, he just paused. Then shifted, like I was in the way. He didn't say it, but I felt it. That's when the first crack opened. I still wear the soft navy robe he bought me on our 3rd anniversary. It used to be his favorite. He'd pull the tie loose with that hungry little smile. Now, it just keeps me warm when I'm pacing the kitchen late at night, trying not to cry too loud. That afternoon, I'd just stepped out of the shower, the robe wrapped tightly around me, damp hair dripping down my back. I was alone. Daniel had left early for a work trip. The house was quiet. Still. I liked it that way lately. Then came the knock. 3 quick raps on the door, like someone not expecting to wait. I thought it was a package. Maybe a neighbor needing something. But when I opened it, it was him. Eli. 19. My neighbor's son. He was taller than I remembered. Broader. Tan from all the landscaping he did during the summers. He had that boyish smile, but his eyes had changed, older somehow. He looked surprised to see me like that. Or maybe not surprised. Just focused. I pulled the robe tighter around me, heat rushing to my cheeks. Claire, he asked. You okay? That moment lasted maybe 5 seconds. Maybe less. But in those 5 seconds, I saw myself through his eyes. Not just as someone's wife. Not someone invisible. Not someone tired. He looked at me like I was still me. And I think that's when I realized something had changed. Not between Eli and me, no, this isn't that story. Not yet, anyway. But something had shifted in me. Something I couldn't unfeel. I wasn't sad about Daniel's absence anymore. I was starting to feel nothing at all. And maybe, that scared me more than anything else. Daniel came back from his trip late Thursday night. I was in bed, pretending to sleep. It wasn't spite, it was exhaustion. Not from the day, but from the pretending. From the smiling, the forgiving, the waiting. I felt the mattress dip under his weight. His hand slid under the covers, fingers tracing along my hip. I tensed, barely. But enough. He must have felt it. still, he didn't stop. "Missed you," he murmured into my neck, his breath warm. I stayed quiet. He kissed me, gentle at first. Soft. Familiar. Then a little more urgent. He was trying. I know he was. But it felt like being touched by someone reading a script. Someone who'd memorized the movements but forgotten the meaning. I turned slightly, just enough to shift his hand off my waist. "Long day," I whispered. He paused. Then sighed and rolled over. I heard him exhale like he'd been rejected. But I didn't reject him. I just couldn't open a door that had no floor behind it. The next morning, I tried. I really did. I made coffee and waited for him at the kitchen island. He walked in wearing that faded green hoodie I used to steal from his drawer. He kissed the top of my head automatically and sat down. "How was the conference?" I asked. He perked up, grateful maybe. He started talking, graphs, patient intake models, new treatment programs. Daniel's a hospital administrator, obsessed with efficiency, obsessed with fixing broken systems. But people? Feelings? That was another story. I listened, nodding, smiling even. But the whole time I was thinking, when's the last time he asked how I was? I don't mean how my day was. I mean the real stuff, if I'm lonely, or scared, or if I still believe in us. He used to ask. He used to sit across from me and stare like I was the only voice in the world he wanted to hear. Now, he talked like he was waiting to be congratulated. At one point, I said quietly, "Sometimes it feels like we're living parallel lives." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you come and go. I come and go. But it's like we're side by side, not together. We used to be closer." He blinked. "Claire, I just got back. I thought, last night, I was trying to be close." I nodded, trying not to cry. "I know. But physical doesn't always mean connected." He was silent for a second. Then, "So now I'm not even allowed to touch my own wife?" And there it was. The misunderstanding. I wasn't saying don't touch me. I was saying, touch the part of me that's buried under laundry and work and years of feeling like background noise. Touch that, and I'll melt. But he didn't hear it that way. He got up, put his mug in the sink harder than he needed to, and muttered, "You always make me feel like the bad guy." I sat there alone, the coffee going cold. Later that day, I was folding towels when I saw Eli again, across the lawn, hauling a heavy bag of mulch for his mother's garden. He glanced up. I froze. It wasn't anything inappropriate. No looks. No lingering. But something in me reacted. Not to him. But to the feeling of being seen. I felt guilty about that. Not because of him, but because of how much I missed being noticed. Like the parts of me that used to light up a room had all gone dim, and he'd just, by accident, flipped a switch. That evening, Daniel brought home flowers. White lilies. My least favorite. "I thought you liked these," he said proudly. "I'm allergic to them," I said, gently. He looked crushed. "Claire, I'm trying." "I know," I said. And that was the worst part, he was. But it still wasn't reaching me. What do you do when someone is giving you everything they think you want, and it still feels like an echo? That Sunday, we had dinner with friends. From the outside, we probably looked like any other couple. Daniel made a few clever jokes, kept his hand on my lower back when we walked into the restaurant, and gently corrected me when I mixed up the name of some Netflix documentary we were half watching. I laughed at the right moments, sipped my wine, nodded along to conversations about school boards and home renovations. But the whole time I was waiting for it to be over. In the car on the way home, he reached over and placed his hand on my thigh, giving it a squeeze. "You looked beautiful tonight," he said. I smiled, because I was supposed to. "Thanks." When we pulled into the driveway, he turned the car off and leaned toward me. "Let's not go inside yet. Let's just sit." I turned to look at him. For a moment, I thought he was going to talk, really talk. That maybe he'd open up about the distance between us, the silence he had to have felt too. Instead, he leaned in to kiss me. I let him. His lips were soft, warm, familiar. But I felt nothing. No spark, no flutter. It was like kissing a memory. He deepened the kiss, letting his hand slide higher up my thigh, and something in me went rigid. I pulled back, gently. "Can we just go inside?" I asked, my voice tight. His brow furrowed. "What's going on with you lately?" "I'm just tired." "That's always the answer now," he said. He let out a long sigh and turned away, grabbing his keys and opening the door harder than he needed to. Inside, I went straight upstairs to change. I put on an old t-shirt and yoga pants, tied my hair back, and stared at my own reflection. I looked dull. Washed out. Like I'd been living on autopilot for years and just now realized I didn't recognize the woman blinking back at me. Daniel came into the bedroom a few minutes later. I felt him behind me as I stood at the mirror. He slid his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. "I miss this," he said into my shoulder. I wanted to melt into him. I wanted to feel wanted. I wanted to feel something. But I couldn't find the connection. When his hand slid under my shirt, I flinched. Just barely. But enough. He froze. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I wasn't expecting. I'm your husband, Claire." "Why are you acting like I'm some stranger?" I turned around slowly. "Because sometimes it feels like that." He stared at me, eyes full of confusion and hurt. "What did I do?" "Tell me what I did, and I'll fix it." I shook my head. "It's not one thing. It's a million tiny things. I don't need flowers or kisses in the car or hands on my body when we haven't even had a real conversation in weeks. I need to feel like we're in the same room. Emotionally." "I'm trying," he said again. "I know," I whispered. "And I'm still pulling away." "Isn't that worse?" He left the room. Not angrily. Just left. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at my feet. My skin still tingled from where he'd touched it, not because of arousal, but from guilt. The worst part? I wanted to want him. I wanted to be held and kissed and touched and swept up in something that felt like the old days. But every time he initiated anything, my mind scrambled. Why now? What does he want? How do I get through this without faking it? And in the still silence of our room, I let the thought rise without pushing it away. Why does everything have to turn into sex? It happened on a Wednesday night. We weren't fighting. There wasn't even tension in the air. That might be what made it worse, how ordinary everything felt right before I unraveled. I'd made pasta. The creamy kind Daniel liked, with roasted garlic and lemon. We sat at the table across from each other, the sound of our forks the only conversation for a full 5 minutes. Then he said, so casually, "Maybe we should take a weekend trip. Just the two of us." I looked up. "Where would we go?" He shrugged. "Anywhere. Somewhere warm. Beach, maybe." That sounds nice, I said. But my voice was flat. And I felt it, this tight coil in my chest. A pressure, building. I thought we needed time, I added, more to myself than to him. Time to talk. Not just escape. We will talk. On the trip. I pushed a piece of pasta around my plate. Talking isn't something you just schedule between sunscreen and cocktails, Daniel. He frowned. I'm trying to fix things. You're the one who keeps saying something's missing. I'm suggesting a way we reconnect, and you shoot it down. I'm not shooting it down, I snapped. I'm asking for depth. I'm asking for us, not a distraction. His voice rose slightly. So what do you want from me, Claire? Spell it out, because I'm running out of ways to guess. And that's when it happened. I slammed my fork down and stood so suddenly my chair screeched across the floor. I want to feel like more than a body you kiss out of habit. I yelled. I want to stop flinching every time you touch me because I'm so afraid it's going to lead to something I'm not ready for. I want you to stop treating sex like it's the solution to everything. He looked stunned. Silent. But I couldn't stop now. The tears were coming too fast. I'm lonely in this house, Daniel. I walk around in that robe, the one you used to love, and now it's just a memory. The only time I even felt seen lately was when Eli knocked on the door and looked at me like I was still alive. His face changed instantly. Eli? The neighbor's kid? I stepped back. That's not what I meant, you just said another man saw you and that meant something. How am I supposed to hear that? He didn't do anything, Daniel. I was crying now, hard. It wasn't him. It was me. It was the fact that someone noticed me. Like I was more than a ghost. And I hate that it mattered. But it did. He stood, jaw clenched, fists pressed into the table. He didn't yell. But he didn't say anything either. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, he turned and walked out of the room. The back door opened and closed. I stood there shaking, arms wrapped around myself, heart pounding so loud I thought I might choke on it. I sank down onto the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, and covered my face with both hands. What had I just done? It wasn't about Eli. Not really. It was about me, how I'd stopped recognizing the woman I'd become. A woman who didn't know how to ask for what she needed until she exploded. A woman who held everything in until it came out sideways. I felt so ashamed. I could have said it differently. I could have told Daniel I missed us without dragging Eli into it. I could have explained without comparing him to a boy still figuring out the world. I curled into myself, tears cooling on my cheeks, and whispered the truth I'd tried to bury. I don't want sex. I want to be loved without being touched. I want to be understood without being undressed. I stayed on the floor until the kitchen went dark. The days after that night blurred into silence. We didn't talk about the meltdown. Didn't revisit the things I'd said, about sex, about Eli, about being invisible in my own house. We moved like strangers, careful not to touch, like even our shadows might spark something neither of us could handle. Daniel didn't sleep on the couch. But the bed felt wider. He got up earlier, came home later. I heard the clink of his coffee mug in the sink before I ever saw his face. Some nights, I heard him walking laps in the backyard after dark, the sound of his sneakers against the stone pavers, steady, like he was trying to walk something out of himself. I missed him. Not just the warmth of his body or the small, instinctive kisses on my shoulder in the mornings. I missed him. The way he used to lean against the doorframe and watch me brush my hair. The way his voice softened when he asked me how I was really doing, like he already knew the answer and just wanted to give me space to say it. But now, he barely looked at me. Not with anger. Not even with coldness. Just distance. Like he'd quietly stepped off some ledge and was waiting to see if I'd notice he'd jumped. And I did. I noticed everything. I noticed how he ran his hand along the back of his neck when he was trying not to cry. How he overwatered the houseplants. How he stood too long in front of the fridge, like the right meal might fix whatever we'd broken. And in the middle of it all, I hated myself for being the one who pulled the thread that unraveled us. One night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom and watched him lying on his side of the bed, scrolling through his phone, face blank. I wanted to crawl in next to him, wrap myself around his body, whisper, "I'm sorry I made you feel like I wasn't yours anymore." But I couldn't move. It was like there was a pane of glass between us. And the more time passed, the thicker it got. I sat on the patio the next morning, cradling a cup of tea, when Eli waved from across the yard. Just a wave. Nothing loaded or suggestive. Just a kind gesture from a neighbor. And it hit me then, this wasn't about him. It never really was. It was about how I'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to notice the quiet unraveling of my life. I thought about Daniel. How he must have felt, hearing me say I'd been seen by someone else. That kind of wound doesn't bleed on the surface. It bleeds in the dark, under the ribs. I realized something else, too. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't careless. He was just tired, like me. Tired from holding on to something we both kept letting go of. That night, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the robe hanging on the back of the chair. The one he gave me. The one that used to mean something. I ran my fingers over the fabric. And then I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding, do I want to try again? Or walk away? The answer didn't come easily. But I knew one thing for sure, staying silent would be its own kind of leaving. The house was still when I came home that night. Daniel had beaten me there. His shoes were by the door, his jacket draped neatly over the back of a chair. I found him in the living room, sitting with the lamp on low, flipping through a photo album I hadn't seen in years. His fingers paused on a picture of us in Italy, young, sunburned, leaning into each other, smiling like nothing could touch us. He didn't look up right away when I walked in. I stood there, unsure what to say. Then finally, I saw you looking at those last week. I didn't say anything then. He nodded, not looking at me. We were happy. We were, I said. And then, softer, do you think we could be again? He closed the album and leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know if we're holding on to love or just holding on to history. It stung. But it was fair. I sat beside him, careful not to get too close. I didn't mean to hurt you. I think I was just trying to feel something. Anything. He turned his head toward me. His eyes were tired, but kind. I know I haven't been the most present partner. I got used to thinking showing up was enough. We were quiet for a long time. The kind of silence that's soft, not sharp. Then, carefully, I leaned against his shoulder. He let me. His arm came around me slowly, like he wasn't sure if it was still allowed. I didn't pull away. We sat like that for what felt like hours, saying nothing. Not forgiving everything, but not turning away either. Eventually, he kissed my forehead, just once, and whispered, I don't know if we'll get back what we had. But I'd try, if you would. I nodded against his chest. I want to try. And I meant it. But I also knew that trying doesn't always lead to saving. Sometimes it just leads to understanding. To letting go with grace, instead of resentment. Later, he fell asleep on the couch. I covered him with a blanket and watched him breathe. The weight of love, real love, pressed down on me in a way I hadn't felt in years. And even if we didn't make it all the way back to each other, even if this was just a soft landing instead of a new beginning, I knew something now: we had tried. And maybe, that would have to be enough. You want to know what happened next? I get it. The robe. The neighbor's son. The unraveling. You're waiting for some wild twist, something scandalous or forbidden. But life isn't a headline. It's quieter. It bruises you slowly. So here's the truth. Nothing happened with Eli. But something shifted. That knock on the door while I stood in that robe, still damp from the shower, still carrying the weight of being everything and nothing in my marriage, that moment woke me up. Not because of him, but because I realized how far I'd drifted from myself. You can love someone deeply and still lose yourself beside them. You can go from passion to pattern, from laughter to logistics. You can share a bed and still feel like you're sleeping alone. I didn't cheat. At least not in the way people define it. But I looked. I wondered. I ached in silence and felt seen in a moment that should have been mundane. And if I'm honest, part of me clung to that moment because I needed to remember what it felt like to be visible. Daniel and I tried. We sat on opposite ends of a fraying rope and pulled. Not out of anger, but out of hope. We went to therapy. We spoke hard truths in softly lit rooms. We touched without expectation. For a while, we even kissed like we meant it. But sometimes, effort doesn't translate to chemistry. Sometimes, trying to revive something dead just teaches you how long it's been gone. Eventually, we stopped trying. We didn't explode. We didn't betray. We just exhaled. Let go. He moved into a condo across town. Still visits the dog. We exchange books sometimes. He gave me the basil plant from our kitchen window before he left. Said I kept it alive better than he ever could. I cried for an hour after he handed it to me. Because love, real love, doesn't always end with fire. Sometimes, it ends with a quiet kindness that breaks your heart even more. And what I've learned? God, where do I even begin? I've learned that desire isn't just about bodies. It's about being understood. Heard. Seen in the ugly and the beautiful and still being chosen. I've learned that when touch feels like a demand instead of an invitation, it becomes hollow. And no amount of sex can fill the space where emotional intimacy used to live. I've learned that guilt is a cruel companion. It whispers that your needs make you selfish. That loneliness inside a marriage is your fault. That wanting more is a betrayal. But it's not. You're allowed to want more. More conversation. More connection. More depth. You're allowed to feel broken, even if nothing looks broken on the outside. And if you're sitting there, listening, thinking, God, I feel like her, then I need you to hear this: you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not asking for too much. You're asking to feel alive in your own skin. That's not a sin. That's being human. I don't know where Daniel's heart is now. I don't ask. We had our time. I loved him. He loved me. But love, it turns out, isn't always enough to make things last. And I'm still learning to be okay with that. I spend more time in silence now. Not the aching kind. The healing kind. I write in a journal. I take long walks. I flirt with the idea of someone new, but I don't rush. For the first time in years, I'm not trying to prove I'm lovable. I'm trying to love myself. And maybe that's what I was missing all along. So no, this isn't a scandal. It's a soft heartbreak. A reminder that the biggest betrayals often happen when we betray ourselves. But healing? That starts with a knock. Even if it's just someone showing up when you thought you were alone. Even if it's just you, answering,